Welcome to the Green Economy Meetup. My name is Fabrice Foreign. I'm the Director of Green Change. And tonight, we have a fabulous lineup of speakers who are going to be telling you about the green economy and saving money by saving energy and saving water.
First to lead us off is Anthony Kinslow, a rising green economy star with a master's and a PhD from Stanford in building science and a lecturer there on racial equity in energy. Anthony, take it away.
Thank you. So I want to get started with just a little bit of my background. Tom, thank you for that kind introduction. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Anthony Kinslow. My background is in civil engineering. I've graduated from North Carolina A&T State University in 2012 now. Wow. And then came out to California to attend my master's in sustainable design and construction at Stanford University. And then really loved what I was doing there and continued on to do my PhD in energy efficiency analytics. While at Stanford, I started my own company, Gemini Energy Solutions, and we provide investment grade energy audits for the small commercial sector. And we do so using technology to remove barriers that are preventing a lot more diverse individuals from being a part of the clean energy economy, part of energy efficiency in a meaningful way. In addition to that, thank you. Just jumping to the next slide because you all can read, but I want to start by kind of setting the stage for what we're talking about today and using the Marin County's climate goals and their climate action plan to do that. So as you can see, from 2005 to 2018, there was about a reduction of a little over 20% emissions from Marin County. But as stated from their goals, by 2030, so in 9 short years, they want to see a 60% reduction. So that is double the GHG reduction and 60% of the time, and 60% of the time. Next slide. So what does that mean practically? Well, just based on a climate action plan, roughly about 185 buildings per month need to receive energy efficiency and electrification just to get us halfway there. And so kind of just understanding what does that mean, that's a lot of buildings per month. And I think Alice can talk a little bit more about what they're doing now, and she will. But next slide. The issue we have right now is that is a higher demand than what we're doing right now, but we also don't have the workforce to reach that current demand that we need to do to electrify every building in Marin, right? And so you kind of have this chicken and egg scenario of we don't have the demand, but the existing workforce is reaching all of the various projects that they have. Contractors are not looking for jobs; they are pretty saturated right now. But we need to drastically increase our current output of clean energy projects. But at the same time, we need a much larger workforce to reach that scale. So which comes first, clean energy projects or workforce development? And so I'm first going to talk about go into a little bit of some solutions and barriers and solutions to increasing our demand for clean energy projects, and then tie that to workforce development. Next slide. So first off, kind of increasing the demand, there's 2 general barriers that I've seen in my time in implementation. The first is confusing and exclusive financing options. There's a lot of different type of financing options offered by different entities. And for a small business owner, those we serve primarily small business owners, that it's really difficult for them to kind of pick and choose which one to go with. On our side, as the customer facing, is often challenging to find and work with all the various different financing options. So consolidating and making it more clear how all the options can work together, or if they can work together, is something that would help streamline some of these projects. But more importantly is increasing demand is Terraform Bill. Now, for those who don't know what Terraform Bill is, it is an inclusive utility investment program that is being discussed right now in the clean energy financing proceeding for the California Public Utilities Commission. And it's being used in many different by many different utilities across the country. And essentially, it's a game changer, in my opinion. It is where the utility invests in cost-effective energy solutions for the customer. So that means that they would go to a resident and pay for that resident to have, say, electrify their home, or potentially solar panels on their house, up to whatever is cost effective. In other words, what can be paid back through the saving 80% of the savings on the bill. But what's key about this is when I talk about exclusive financing options, most throughout the state of California, most of the solutions are debt-based. That means that you have to either, if you can't afford to pay it up front, then you have to take out a loan of some sort to pay for it. Terraform Bill is not a loan. It is not connected to the individual. It is directly to the behind the meter, which means that whether you're a tenant or a building owner, you can take advantage of that program. And so that really starts to address this issue of tenant and owners, the dichotomy between tenants and owners. It also has shown in other places to do better at reaching more diverse communities, as well as having a higher acceptance rate. So please keep a lookout on Terraform Bill. It is being discussed right now. That could be, hopefully by this time next year, be implemented statewide. And then secondly is unconscious biases. We often, and this goes in both directions. So for increasing demand, we really need to start reaching communities that have historically not been reached or addressed. And one of the reasons that we haven't been doing that is that people have unconscious biases about different groups of folks, believing that they don't actually care about the environment, or they don't have an interest in doing clean energy upgrades. Every utility has this term, hard to reach, and it really often talks about small commercial and communities of color. And the reality is they're not necessarily hard to reach. We're just offering them solutions that aren't attractive, and the people who are offering them don't look like them, don't understand culturally what resonates with them, etc. So partnering with community-based organizations and incentivizing racially equitable solutions can really start to address some of these issues that we're having with connecting with the hard to reach customers. Next slide. So just to give you some examples, these are the demographics for solar workers and energy auditors. And I want to key in on energy auditors, specifically on the male to female ratio. It's really problematic, right? And when we think about kind of how many the national demographics of who lives in America, and you look at these demographics, there's a real discrepancy here, right? And so next slide. Thanks for your question. So one of the major contributors to this is the isms, racism and sexism. And I would actually challenge anyone here to start thinking about one of the barriers they think of, and see whether or not underlying of that barrier is something to do with racism and sexism. Just for context, racism, sexism, you often may have heard these words, institutional racism or systemic racism. Institutional racism is about institutions that have policies and procedures that enable, protect, or even encourage systemic racism or racial biases. Systemic racism is more about kind of our internal biases and how widespread they are. So of these first historical laws, you all may be familiar with the term redlining. If you're not, I would encourage you to Google it. Redlining. It was the process in which banks and cities would redline certain parts of certain areas as risky investment areas. Those areas were in fact African American or other minority communities, and that was the only reason for it. It wasn't that it was purposefully and strategic to disinvest and extract from those communities. Next, click. Thanks. Unconscious biases. People, you click again. People have perceived areas as more dangerous, so they then go to them and serve them, or they provide loans at higher interest rates because they perceive individuals, African Americans or other minorities, as more risky. And then lack of empathy and awareness. We often create programs that don't account for the unique challenges that a group may have. And we'll go through this a little bit, but childcare is a big barrier to workforce development. So next slide. So why is diversity critical to climate goals? And I think the top two reasons are, one is we need a larger trained workforce. Once we increase our demand, we need the people to be able to provide those services. And as you'll see in a few other slides, there's a lot of opportunity in communities of color that have historically not been approached, historically not been engaged, been reached or engaged in this space that can help drastically increase our workforce. And then second is that reaching diverse communities starts to overcome some of these biases that we see in the industry right now, the perception of danger or uncertainty when talking, language barriers with certain groups, and misperception of opportunity. There's this thought that if you go into these neighborhoods, they won't say yes to energy efficiency. And that's just really not the case if you do it correctly. So next slide. So just context, at Gemini Energy Solutions, we don't lead any workforce development efforts, but we do work closely with a lot of workforce development efforts, community-based organizations and other institutions around the country. You can see where we are, the different programs from this map. California actually is Stanford's workforce development, connected with the schools in San Jose and the unions. And that's started in, I believe, 2015 now. And we've been doing that, engaging with the high school students there, partnering with the unions for that. And next slide. And what we've seen throughout these commonalities between these workforce programs that I think are just some examples here, really being proactive and thoughtful about how racism and sexism impacts the day-to-day lives of these individuals that you're trying to reach, and providing solutions that directly address those challenges, right? So childcare, compensating time. Oftentimes you hear people rave about free trainings. Well, people don't have the money or the time to do a training for a month, 2 months, 3 months, even a week or a weekend without pay. Right? We value our time and we want our time to be monetized. We should expect the same for these groups. Cross-training is really important, not just having them be able to do one skill, but multiple skills, so that there's a more opportunity across the board and more chance of sustained work. And then not disqualifying based on racist structures. So I want to highlight that and go into my last few slides. Next slide, thanks. So a racist structure would be, say, the disproportionate punishment in the school system, right? Where you can see that this graph is a little confusing, and I hope you'll all be able to see these slides later on, but the light blue, male enrollment, 8% African Americans, but male expulsions is 23%, right? Much higher than the number of people. So what you're seeing there is that the system, and what research behind it has shown that it's because teachers perceive when African Americans do something, African American student, whether male or female, you see African American women also have this higher percentage of expulsions. But what they perceive is that if an African American does something wrong, it's part of a trend, right? So if they do something wrong on Monday and then a month or two later, they do something wrong on a Tuesday, they see that as a trend of bad behavior and increase the punishment. But if a white student does something wrong that same Monday and a few months later on a Tuesday, they see it as individual events. And so the punishment or expulsion is less. So a racist structure, right? What happens to those kids who are expelled from school? Well, obviously they have a higher chance of going down the wrong path, having trouble with the law, etc. But that means that that there's an opportunity there for picking them up and giving them a better opportunity through the clean energy economy, through workforce development. Next slide. And so really my last slide here is also another racist structure of criminalization, where I think we can all agree that no one, depending on the color of your skin, is more or less prone to crime, right? There's not a crime gene that relates to melanin, right? But in America, we see that 1 in 3 Black men will be imprisoned, right? That's not because Black men are more prone to crime. And a lot of people will also want to say, oh, that has to do with income or low income, etc. That actually, if you separate income and race, you still see this huge separation between white men and Black men, independent of income. So I do want to cancel that out as well. And what you're seeing here is another opportunity. These Black men and Latino men, you also see is a lot higher percentages than white men or the average men in general. These are husbands, these are fathers, these are individuals who want to find some way of having a good life for themselves, for their friends and family. This is an opportunity for us to say, let's take these individuals who have had run-ins with the law, oftentimes for petty things that they got more severe punishment for, back to the expulsions example, right? For the same mental reasoning as the expulsions example. And let's bring them into the fold of workforce development. And with that, I'm going to pause, pass it to Alice. But before I do, I would say that Gemini Energy Solutions, I mentioned we conduct investment grade energy audits for small commercial buildings. We also provide connections to contractors who can do the work and go through the financing process alongside our customers so that they can get the money to actually implement these projects. And with that, thank you.